another new edition of Unfinished Business Television. This is the August edition. I am your host, as always, Jeff Galashaw at Unfinished B2. And with me, as always, is Mr. Andre Joseph of AJ Epics Productions.
It's the best damn thing going today.
Yes, it is. Now, for those of you who are watching this from the beginning, we're going to let you know this is going to be a long one because we got a lot of news, a lot of trailers to get through. And, you know, the review show will be totally separate. So you don't have to worry about that at the end of this. So let's get into the nitty gritty. So first off, Skydance has bought Paramount Global, which is basically Sherry Redstone. Paramount Global was her, you know, what she owned. And now Skydance owns it. And it's becoming like the empire since all these media companies are becoming conglomerates. I mean, the writing was on the wall. So it's not like this is like, oh, so shocking. Because I forgot why they canceled the deal the first time, but now it's definitely going through. Andre, what do you think about this?
I'm a little relieved just from the face value aspect of it because I really did not want Paramount to turn into another 20th Century Fox. I didn't want to see a company that is responsible for some of the greatest movies ever produced to end up just becoming somebody else's library, whether it's Sony or Universal, and end up putting all their movies on a streaming service. Hopefully, this is a very optimistic outlook for Paramount's future because I know they're going to be concentrating a great deal on improving Paramount Plus and all their streaming platforms and, you know, try to, I guess, get more into multimedia with it. They still have a lot of work to do when it comes to some of their properties because, you know, who knows what's going to happen after the next Mission Impossible. They're trying to save Star Trek. So, you know, time will tell, but hopefully this all leads things into the right direction. But we'll have to wait and see.
Well, what like I said, we'll see. In other business news, unfortunately for the physical media market, Redbox has gone bankrupt and pretty much out of business.
It's a sign of the times as far as just physical media in general. And obviously, this was the company owned by, I didn't know Chicken Soup for the Soul owned Redbox. So that was kind of a shock when I first heard about that. But yeah, you know, this kind of also ties in with, I think Sony announced they were going to stop making physical media themselves. They're going to stop making CDs and blank DVDs. So basically, if you're looking to back up your stuff on a physical format, you better do it right now and go through like a third party dealer because this stuff's going to be going away soon. And that's one of the things I'm doing now, even with my older films, is trying to get everything transferred to digital before, you know, you can't even get your hands on these things.
Exactly, where it becomes like the Disney Vault, where you gotta hope like this month they're gonna release this so you can watch it. And even my thing is now I know like on Amazon Prime you can buy digitally the movies, so now it's in your thing. But let's say something, God forbid, like your account goes bad or somebody hacks your account. Now, do you lose all those movies you bought?
That's a good question. There's a good chance you just might. And then even to go and buy the movies digital, that's the thing that still bothers me as a cinephile myself is I want to hear the commentary. I want to see the extras. You know, I love when Shout Factory does the bonus features and they get those rare interviews and promos. So it's like I can't completely give it up as a boutique, but yeah, I've been seeing this writing on the wall for a long time.
Well, the thing I don't understand, it has to do with the movie we're going to talk about in our review section. I saw the TV Glow. Now, on Amazon Prime, I can buy it. But why is it when I want it? But if I get it on iTunes, that comes with commentary and all these extras. But yet the Amazon Prime, nothing. I just get the movie.
It makes
Who?
It's got to be like a licensing issue.
Okay, because I'm like, I don't understand why one can get it and one can't. Because I almost here's a hint to my review. I almost bought it on, Amazon Prime, but now I'm thinking, oh, I'm gonna have to buy it on iTunes because I want that audio commentary. Or, if by some miracle they put out a physical disc, I'll buy it as long as it has extras on it. But like for people like me, maybe you like a particular film that might not have been the most popular. What are you supposed to do if you want the physical and the extras now? Uh,
That's a good question. I really don't know.
okay, and because I know only some people care about business. The last piece of real business news is that Netflix and Amazon's newest productions for streaming are mostly foreign TV series, which might also be because, again, of when we had the strike and things are slow to start moving. Plus, I feel like, especially when it comes to Netflix, I feel like they're spending so much on these star driven movies that they're putting out that they have less money to put out like original series, which, to tell you the truth, they have a better track record with. Their series usually are decent. It's their movies that are just like very questionable when it comes to quality.
I think you're on the money with it. It's also to save on costs, get something that's already pre-produced and just put out all the seasons like they kind of did with Cobra Kai. They already had the first two seasons produced for YouTube, and the third season they only had to spend on marketing, and then the remaining seasons that came after season three. It's also, I think, maybe a response to the success of Squid Game that they realize if they could find something unique and it's not an American produced production with no stars, but it has like a great concept. Let's find the next Squid Game. So I think that's exactly what Netflix and Amazon are trying to do. And yes, the original productions are hit and miss, and it feels like more on the Netflix side. I think Amazon has a slightly better track record with their original content, whereas with Netflix, it just seems like anybody could go in and do a pitch to a producer and it's like, well, who's in it? Okay, we'll sign a check right now. And then you end up with a piece of crap like Rebel Moon.
Yeah, unfortunately, yes. But speaking of Squid Game, David Fincher is dead set on making an American version of Squid Game, even though he and the late Robert Towne have a whole Chinatown prequel series all written and ready to go. And, my thing is, I know David Fincher tried to make previously a television series. I can't remember the name of it right now, with a Gillian Flynn that was going to be too expensive to make, and also a series he wanted to do on music directors in the '90s, basically an semi-autobiographical movie that didn't end up, going into production for the same reason because it was too expensive. But now he literally has this, golden goose of a project that everybody's drooling over, and God forbid since he passed, but perfect timing, to go into production on it since Robert Towne passed. But he's obsessed with making an American version of Squid Game, which most Americans surprisingly watch the foreign version of it. So what is the need of making this American version his way? Is it just like stylistically? Does he want to go somewhere different with the story? What's with this? And
I love David Fincher. He's one of my heroes, but there's no reason for this to be produced. More people are going to wait for the second season of the original Squid Game than to see an American remake that's not going to be as good, no matter how stylish he gets or whoever he decides to cast. Although I still say they should get Andrew McCarthy since he resembles the guy from the original, especially with him on the comeback after Bratz. But that's just wishful thinking right there. But I do love the idea of doing a Chinatown prequel and returning to the Jake Gittes character, because that is a character that's totally ripe for having a continuing series on one of these platforms. And yes, Robert Towne, having written some scripts before his untimely passing, is just that added bonus along with the Fincher style. And if we're really lucky, I mean, I know there's no way Jack Nicholson's ever going to get back into acting, as far as I could tell. But I know there was supposed to be a third movie after the two Jakes that never got made. Maybe here's your opportunity to do that. Of course, you have to recast, but I would love to see Fincher tackle that.
Well, I mean, it might be a little harder. You have to find now a writer who's willing to step. I mean, it won't be hard, but finding an actual good writer to step into the shoes of Robert Towne to continue the story. Especially now, you also don't even have Robert Evans around to produce it,
There could
and
be
well,
an issue there.
yeah, and obviously Roman Polanski ain't coming back
Uh,
to it. I don't think anybody wants him really to come back. Um, so yeah, we'll see how that goes, or what ends up seeing the light of day first.
the
Uh,
LAPD wants him back.
So, well, everybody wants Roman Polanski. Victims groups, maybe some ex-wives, babies, mamas. Um, and now on to the lighter side of things. Kevin Bacon in promotion for Maxine, which we will be reviewing later, decided he'd like to know what it would be like to dress up as a regular person and just see what it's like not to get bombarded for a day. And I guess he wore prosthetics, went out, and then had to stand in line for coffee and realized this sucks. And immediately that little experiment ended. No offense. I mean, I feel like everybody knows who Kevin Bacon is because, again, he's in everything almost. You've seen him in something, no matter what preference of genre, movies, or television you like. But it's just like, I just feel like maybe since he lived in New York all these years and Los Angeles, I would figure he doesn't get mobbed quite as much there. I can see if he was going in the Midwest where he'd be mobbed, but I feel like New York, you're kind of treated like a different person unless somebody's like, "Hey, aren't you that guy?" But well, now, and I mean, he's 60 something years old and he still looks the same. So I don't know what he really expected that would be different.
Yeah, it's a little surprising. I mean, we're going to be talking a lot about Kevin Bacon in the next couple of weeks, but I feel the impression I get, because I follow him on Instagram, he just seems like a regular guy. I don't know why he would have to like get upset that he's being treated like a normal person. I mean, that's why like Michael J. Fox and all these guys moved to New York at the height of their careers, because they didn't like getting mobbed by the paparazzi in Los Angeles, and the people on the tour buses oogling and ogling. In New York City, you could just walk on the street and just go get your coffee and go by your day. Nobody gives a shit. You may get some tourists here or there, and maybe get stopped every now and then, but Kevin Bacon just seems like a down home dude that really, he'll take the subway. He has his farm. He plays his music with his brothers. You know, be a regular guy. Embrace that. You don't have to like think that you have to be this high and mighty celebrity. I mean, I think he's more mature than that.
Well, it's interesting that also, I guess during the press tour, he, I guess, surprised a bunch of tour goers by, I guess, going on the tour with them in the middle of it. Like he just happened to be on the lot. I don't know. That sounded a little pre-planned, but yeah, stranger things have happened. And which, not to mention, since they still have a Stranger Things upcoming season, he would not be bad as let's take a star from the 80s and totally recast him in our series. And
Well, they already got Linda Hamilton. I think that's been
oh,
filled.
damn it. See, Kevin Bacon, you should have had me as your agent.
Mhm.
Um, next, Emma Roberts. Yes, the infamous, who has complained about, I guess, this review culture as to why Madam Web bombed. I'm like, I think it's the movie is the reason the film bombed. I don't think it was any critics. but she is complaining that it used to be like maybe up to five major critics that when a movie was released, it was up to them to really tell the people whether it was bad or good. But now she's complaining that through the freedom of the internet and press, there's so many people who can just leave bad reviews but don't have to give their personal information. So you don't even really know who they are. That can sink a film that might actually be good. And she actually suggested people should have to leave their driver's license or ID number on their accounts, and then maybe they think twice before leaving bad reviews because they'd have to put their money where their mouth is. Now, to this, I'd be like, that would be a dream. That's what we've been trying to do on social media, so maybe people, and we'd have less bots. But, I feel like this is more personal to her because her movies have been bombing. And now she has what, Space Cadet as her latest movie, kind of a Legally Blonde, only with astronauts on, I think it's Amazon or Hulu, coming out. So, Andre, what do you feel about young Miss Roberts' comments?
I think it's a little bit extreme that you have to like give away all this vital information in order to write a review. But I don't think the thought is completely off base. Yeah, there's a lot of these internet critics out there that simply give just skating reviews, but not really like a full analysis of why the movie didn't work. That's why sometimes, and I'll be transparent, sometimes I get like some bad critiques on my stuff on YouTube. And if it's of, actually the educated, constructive criticism, then I'll approve it. But if it's just like, oh, this shit sucks, and then they try to like, dog it down, then I'd ignore that because that's just simply trolling keyboard assholes with no life, with nothing to do with themselves. They just waste their energy hating on people. And there's a lot of that, especially doing a lot of writing. I see that all the time. But I would like to see some more standards, maybe a little bit better than the Metacritic type stuff like Rotten Tomatoes, where you actually can separate professional journalists doing their critiques versus just some average Joe Blow that's simply just giving even not even just a bad review, but sometimes an overly positive review that could be a bit off-putting.
Well, also, I'd like to complain about people who, let's say, give good reviews even before they could have possibly even seen the movie.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see that go. And especially when it comes to people of color films, I would like to see, I would like to stop seeing like already advanced, like even when just the trailer comes out and there's automatically a bad review of the film that no one could have possibly have seen yet.
Mhm.
So I'd like that to stop. Um, Moving on, Megaopolis has distribution theatrical through Lionsgate and will be out on September 27th, but it's going to be a limited theatrical run. They are hoping for more of a, I guess, streaming kind of revenue more to take place. And also, a lot of people are wondering, are they going to keep the scene that breaks the fourth wall where theaters would have to hire an actor to play a reporter who interacts with Adam Driver on the screen? And let's say theater does take this film, that means 4 times a day that actor has to be prepared and ready. What do you think of this business deal that is going down with Megapolis?
I think it's a smart call. I think it shows that Francis Ford Coppola understands the risk that he's taking with this. It's a passion project, and it's not going to be this commercial production. So this helps, I think, to just at least for people who are purists or who are fans of his work to get that opportunity to see it on a big screen and then try to make the revenue back through streaming. I think that's the smart way to do it versus what Costner just did with Horizon, which I know we'll talk about. So I think that's a good call. But the thing with the breaking the fourth wall, yeah, that's going to be a big question mark. Only thing I could guess is maybe they'll just have like some digital person pop up in the home video release, kind of like what they did with Gremlins 2, where they had to change the Hulk Hogan bit with John Wayne. That's the only other way I could see it. I pray for the safety of whoever has to do it in the theater, though, that they don't get jumped.
Well, I think that's why it might only play again limited theaters, like the big whatever's a big theater that has IMAX in your town will probably be the only one that has the interaction. And I don't know
I
if
just
it's
don't
like,
want some old lady having a heart attack.
well, that's I guess you have to react in real time. What if you're due to do the 7:30 but nobody show, there's no audience? Do you
Yeah, that's
still have to
true.
go?
What happens if nobody shows up? There might be like one person in the theater.
Well, that's why I said it. I could see like it working at a big IMAX here because people just go to see it in IMAX. But like either New York, maybe Florida and Los Angeles, I don't know about those other states. And so next we have just when you thought maybe Megan and Megan 2 would be the end of their world, no. Bloomhouse has expanded the Megan universe with the erotic thriller Soulmate that will come out in 2026, which I don't know. This sounds like a kind of a love doll situation. Think that Lars and the Real Girl, Ryan Gosling, only done as an erotic thriller or horror. Many possibilities here. I don't know if it could go theatrical with the ideas I'd have. But how are you feeling about this project?
I'm not surprised they're going to expand the Megan universe. I just don't know if this is the smartest thing to do. I'd rather just a sequel, or if you're gonna do universe building, why not just universe build with Child's Play? Universal owns both.
Well, I mean, there will be a sequel in January, or I think next summer, of Megan 2.0. But my thing is, especially considering Megan's PG-13, why would you expand the universe to something that might be an R-rated or hard R? Is it like all the stuff we held back from these Megan movies? We're gonna go full steam ahead in Soulmate. Matt Reeves, director of the Batman, his Arkham Asylum Batman spinoff series was scrapped at Max, which I think we kind of knew was going to happen. Because you got to kind of remember, after the Batman, they had set up all these like Batman tie-in series for Max. Like there was supposed to be one about the Gotham Police Department that was supposed to star Jeffrey Wright, but now he's busy. And now you have the Penguin coming out next year, and then you had this Arkham series, and this seems just to be the latest one to drop by the wayside. I mean, I think it's a good idea, but maybe they're just not ready for it right now, or maybe this should just be a standalone movie instead of them trying to make it into a series so much.
I think it's another James Gunn call. I think that he's looking to transition away from the Robert Pattinson, Matt Reeves Batman. I mean, they're still going to do the sequel, but beyond that second Batman movie and beyond this Penguin series, I don't know if they want to continue following up on it. I think he wants to keep things more cohesive, and he's just doing those other movies because they were already greenlit before he took over DC. And so maybe the Arkham angle is probably going to be saved for the Brave and the Bold, or a future sequel to that if it does well.
I guess we'll see. Um, Street Fighter is getting a new adaptation that is due to hit theaters in 2026. But we have kind of a Supergirl situation here because the original directors, the directors of the horror film Talk to Me, recently dropped out of production or pre production on the film to go make their own original horror film. Again, I know we interviewed Steve D'Souza, who directed the original Street Fighter movie, and I hate to say, I have never seen from beginning to end, so I can't really comment on this. So I'll leave it up to you. What are you feeling about this new adaptation coming in 2026?
Well, kudos to the Talk to Me directors for deciding to do their own original project rather than to do an IP. I think that's a commendable decision on their part. Street Fighter absolutely needs a serious reboot for the big screen, between what the Souza did, which, has its fans, and there's aspects of it that are enjoyable, but at the end of the day, it was treated as a kids movie that was essentially like the original GI Joe film that we never got back then. And then there was that terrible Legend of Chun Li flick, which is very meme worthy, especially with Chris Klein's performance. But what I've always been looking for is, and this is why I thought maybe it was interesting when they had to talk to me directors. I always wanted something more in line with the 1994 animated Street Fighter II movie, which was more graphic, more violent, had the infamous Chun Li shower scene, but it was able to like focus on just a handful of characters, and then everybody else had cameos. They weren't like trying to shoehorn them all in for purposes of the plot, like with the D'Souza movie. So if they could get somebody, and I don't care if it's in horror or if it's like a John Wick guy doing it, if they could get somebody that could really give it some serious weight, that's what I would want. It doesn't have to be R rated, but it just has to be edgy and deadly brutal to be like a legit Street Fighter film. Something more along the lines of the game and that animated movie.
So you think it's going to go to maybe more of an extreme version like the Mortal Kombat for a recent movie?
I don't think it'll go as far. I think it's still going to be PG-13, but they're going to probably push the envelope enough to where it could be an R rating if the action is brutal enough.
Okay. Um, Netflix is going to be behind the crime thriller R.I.P. or Rest in Peace, starring Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, with Joe Carnahan directing. I'm not hating this project. This sounds like something that finally Netflix is getting something with two big name stars teaming together for a worthwhile project instead of hey, we've got a Marky Mark and Kevin Hart comedy here. I want them to, if they're gonna do star driven projects, I want more of this and less of the Kevin Hart Marky Mark stuff. Mm.
Well, anytime that Affleck and Damon get back together, it's kind of an event, as we saw with Air, as we saw with maybe not that Ridley Scott movie that didn't really do so hot, but typically, yeah, you want to see what those guys are going to do. And having Carnahan involved, hopefully, this could be a little bit of a comeback for him because he really needs it right now. His last couple of movies have not really gotten much play, and maybe this could be something. I don't know much of the plot details or where it's going to be located, but maybe it's something that if he could go back to kind of the style of Narc, I think that could bring him back.
Yep. Now Wayne Kramer just needs to get a deal with Netflix so he can make a comeback. Um, Eddie Murphy has been making the rounds with Axel F. Yes, we're going to talk about that too eventually.
Yes.
But he's also been giving out a little more details of his dream project, a mockumentary called Soul, 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 about I guess, a kind of rock and roll R&B singer from the 60s who's like Forrest Gump, has worked with everybody, and there'd be, celebrity interviews like the Robert Townsend movie Jackie's Back, for instance. But only this would be, Eddie Murphy. And he said he's been close to making it many times, but and now these are his reasons, mind you. He said it would be too self indulgent and not enough people would understand it.
Well, we'll definitely talk about Axel F. But I had this thought just the other day as I was thinking about like, okay, now that we got the new Beverly Hills Cop, what else would I like to see Eddie do? Because obviously, I don't want to constantly go back to the well of his old projects. But one thing I remember him saying years ago when he was on Inside the Actor Studio with James Lipton, he mentioned he wanted to direct again, and he'd been looking to do something pretty soon, although that was 2006 when he said this. I think this could be the movie he directs the first time since Harlem Nights. It sounds to me like this is one of those passion projects that he probably had for years, and maybe nobody wanted him to do it simply because he had all these flops and they wanted to keep him pigeonholed into family films. But now, I mean, listen, Netflix and Amazon are willing to foot the bill for anything he wants to make, including him going back to stand up. I think, who cares if maybe it doesn't connect with everybody, but if it's something close to the Eddie Murphy that we know and love, why not do it and make it his second directorial film before he decides to hang it up?
I'm just hoping it's more Austin Powers than, let's say, the Love Guru.
Yeah.
So that's all I hope. It sounds like an interesting project. I'm willing, if he ever decides to make it, to check it out. But I'm just like, I think maybe he should have made it when he was in his slump, when he was making like what was it, the Distinguished Gentleman. That's when that should have came, when he had that like big ass, like
No,
almost wave like hairdo, or when he was doing kids films. Maybe that this should have been like his step back to more adult centered film. But we'll see. Um, Marvel is saying that Wonder Man, the series, will be extremely different from the comic book. I mean, realistically, Wonder Man is mainly only known through, if you're a really diehard comic book collector, West Coast Avengers. So that's why I'm like, it's again another like minor character. I don't understand, when you have the major characters, you don't care about rewriting and scaring the audience off. But now when it comes to the minor characters, you're like, we've got to be careful here. For characters no one barely remembers unless they're a diehard. And also, they mentioned that Fantastic Four will be taking place in an alternate universe and will be a period piece.
well, first with Wonder Man, this character is supposed to be like a Hollywood stuntman, so I already think this is going to be the version of the Fall Guy, and I don't know if it's going to be good or bad. Obviously, there's a little controversy because they race swapped the character from the comic book. I'm just like, I really don't care for it. I'm kind of numb anytime Marvel goes and says, "Oh yeah, this is going to be the most different thing we've ever done," or when they did Miss Marvel, they're like, "Oh yeah, we're doing wacky stuff that nobody's ever seen before." They're always trying to do these things to gaslight and to try to hype up a new project, and now people are just sort of numb to it. There's nothing really exciting until you see a trailer to see, okay, is this good or is it bad or is it the same old shit? So I mean, it remains to be seen, and if it's even going to be something they're going to follow up on when it comes out. As far as Fantastic Four goes, I'm not surprised given that they've shown some things that pretty much show that this is going to be like an alternate 1960s setting. And I always felt that the Fantastic Four should be done as a period piece. Um, so I'm okay with that. And I guess it'll play into the multiverse, and I guess events happening there that may cause them to go into the main MCU timeline, but then has to explain, like, well, what happened to the real Fantastic Four in the main timeline? That's what I'm curious about. So we'll see. I think it's an interesting spin and does something that's a little bit out of the box than just, oh yeah, they've been there all along and here they are now. Like this could be actually something unique.
Well, I'm happy for it because, I mean, they didn't really have any other place to go, considering their previous two attempts. They're straightforward and modern day, so it makes more sense. Even though now watching the 2000 ones, it feels so dated. It might have come out in the 90s, pretty much. Next, we have Scarlett Johansson, before she was cast as Black Widow, came to talk to Marvel about making a Blonde Phantom movie, and now it's a project she's saying she might still be developing for Disney Plus. I have no idea who Blonde Phantom is as a superhero, so I can't really comment. But it just sounds like, well, when she was going to Marvel, I guess it wasn't the Marvel we know now. They had a few hit movies, so it was like, hey, bring in any minor character if you see it as a starring role for you, and maybe you could get that movie made. But now I'm just like, if it does go to Disney Plus, I just feel like it's the same thing as we were just talking about with Wonder Man or even She-Hulk, where we're just taking minor characters and just like, okay, maybe this will work somehow, or maybe we can include this into our overall vision that we don't really know what we're doing with anymore. What do you feel about this a story?
The little bit that I know about Blonde Phantom is that she is sort of like a Dick Tracy era superhero. One that, yeah, if you did as a show, it probably would have been a good tie-in with Agent Carter, the Haley Atwell character. So that could have been interesting to do. But yeah, I mean, it just would have been one of those things. Like at that time, Marvel was only concentrating on the big money characters that everybody knew, so they weren't going to tackle the smaller characters yet. Um, if you were to do that now, I would put it under that spotlight banner that they use with Echo, or it would just be like its own contained thing, not try to make it overall connect with anything else in terms of the main storylines in the MCU. And ultimately, I think it all worked out for Scarlett Johansson because, I mean, yes, there's other actresses who could have played Black Widow, but she always, to me, brought something kind of spicy to it. And I'm not talking about in a sexual way. I'm just talking about like her persona, her attitude that comes off. That even in the first Avengers movie, I really enjoyed how she held her own with the other superheroes, and that made it worthwhile to say like this is a character I'd like to see more of, and yes, to have her own film. It sucks her own movie had to come out later in the whole MCU business, but I think it just worked out overall for her.
Well, I'm just hoping, even though I like the style and direction of it, I hope it's not like that movie she was in that Frank Miller directed with Samuel
Oh,
Jackson.
Spirit.
Yeah, I'm just hoping it's not a repeat of that, unless you're going to make it of quality, But I'll admit already the title alone makes it sound like either a B movie or a comedy. So we'll see. 23 Jump Street star Channing Tatum, or hoping 23 Jump Street star Channing Tatum, says it's the best script he has read for a third film. And let's not forget, he wrote, what was it? Magic Mike 3. So that's not something I would have wanted to be quoted with, but okay. Um, I don't want I love 21 Jump Street, the show. And I like 21 Jump Street, the movie. 22 Jump Street was okay. I still like 21 Jump Street as a movie better. But even I don't want to see a 23 Jump Street. I think the franchise is over, and I don't want it crossed over with Men in Black either, if that is the script that he is talking about that he read. And so that is my personal feelings on it.
He has a bad taste in scripts. That I know for a fact, especially when he described his ideas for the Gambit movie. I'm like, thank God this did not get produced because it would have been a real piece of shit. I think 21, 22 Jump Street, definitely, I agree, should not happen, period. You had that ending in the second one where they made all the spoofs of all the other sequels that they would potentially do. Why even bother? And Tom Rothman has already come out and said, we have no plans for this. We are not going to touch it. That could change in due time. And I know there was talk a while back about maybe Tiffany Haddish or Sydney Sweeney possibly doing a female-led sequel, but no, I think the concept is played out. It is done. I don't think he can do any better than that first one.
Agreed. Uh,
Only
Adam
thing I would
McKay.
see is if they just did a serious reboot to be more in line with the show.
Well, I'd be willing to check it out, but that could end up going the way of the Miami Vice movie. So that's the
In
only
fact,
thing I.
there's a draft written by the guys who wrote Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, and it reads like a Mission Impossible movie.
I'm just like, it's 21 Jump Street. We're not doing spies here. I mean, undercover work, yes, but more Vice stuff. Adam, writer director Adam McKay, originally developed The Boys, which of course is now the widely watched television series, as a trilogy, and he had already gone as so far as to have written the first movie completely. And
I'm glad it ended up working out as a TV show. I think they were able to get away with a lot more as a show than as a series of films, and more time to really develop each of the characters, both on the Seven and the Vought people that work with them, and of course Butcher and the rest of his crew. I think it worked out better in that sense. And the only downside now is just all these spin-offs they're trying to do and animated shows. It's like, no, just end it already. Like, you're going to stretch this out way too far. And as I said before, watching this fourth season, which hasn't been bad, it's starting to feel a bit fatigued, to be honest. And I'm glad that they're going to end it with the fifth season. But as a movie, yeah, I'm better off what they did here.
okay, I wouldn't have minded the movie, as a reader of the comic books, because there's only about so many issues of the comic, so I figured the story could end there. But as like with Walking Dead, the series has veered off quite a bit from where the comic books are, really saving the greatest hits for the series. So, and speaking of, since we're all in this animated and comic book stuff, Spider Noir has found its villain in Brendan Gleeson. I mean, hey, why not? Nicolas Cage's up there in years too. And they have found their Robbie Robertson, or that universe's Robbie Robertson, who will be played by Lamorne Morris, who some of you might remember from that Zoe Deschanel series, New Girl. And he's mainly a comedic actor, so I'm wondering if he's going to be comedic relief, or is this a more dramatic role for him? But I'm looking forward to this Spider Noir series.
I'm looking forward to it too. I don't know how the villains are in the Spider-Man North series, but I mean, if Brendan Gleeson's playing like their version of Doc Ock, I'm all for it. I think he'd be fantastic for that.
Well, he might be their version of Kingpin. So I'm just like, but then the fighting season, this is going to be weird. He's not the most physical guy. So it'll be interesting.
Play Donald.
Well, I mean, he's played villains many times before, so this won't be anything new for him. There is a producer out there who is a producer on the television shows Ripley, who is shopping around a remake of the classic Western, A Fistful of Dollars. And no, he hasn't said if it's going to be the whole trilogy, but I'm guessing if this one is successful, he'll probably want to make it into a trilogy.
No, no. I'm. If you're looking to try to get to the point of remaking The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, you're stepping on sacred ground there. And I'm not, because I'm a Clint Eastwood fan. I'm just, in general, I think from a pure cinematic belief, this is something you don't touch. If you want to do something similar, go ahead. But also remember too, Fistful of Dollars is a remake of Yojimbo, so it's not really a entirely original thing. Um, you could do other takes on it, but no, I would not touch this. I think you would have to like yell at this man and tell him to do something else.
Well, unfortunately, we'll see. And even though I'm not the hugest Clint Eastwood fan, even I'm like, leave the original alone. It stands on. It's a fine stand on its own film. That I think even modern audiences, even though I know the younger audiences don't like to watch movies from before they were born, but I think even they would have the attention span to watch it. It's literally 90 minutes long. So it's not a long movie. And it's not like, oh, it spends a lot of time developing characters or anything. It's a Western action. So give it, anybody who has not seen A Fistful of Dollars, watch it. It is good. It is a classic. There's a reason it's a classic, and not just because Clint Eastwood lived to be 90 something years old. You know, Sergio Leone is a gifted director. Watch it.
And trust me,
Um,
will turn that shit down in 1 minute.
exactly. Now, next, since we've mentioned this story a little earlier, but due to bombing at the box office, they have decided not to release Horizon Chapter 2 theatrically this year. They haven't said when they're going to release it, but the thought is that since Horizon didn't make as much money as only Kevin Costner expected to, that they are going to try and see if they can find an audience more on streaming for it, and then maybe build up some momentum for the second one, which then makes you wonder what are they going to do about 3 and 4, because Amazon and supposedly, I don't know if it was Paramount or Netflix, offered to promote or produce the Horizon, but Kevin Costner was adamant that no, it must be cinematic. And part of me stands by him for respecting the medium of film and wanting people to experience it that way. But also, Kevin, your career is not in the Robin Hood days when you were a box office draw, like at the top of the box office. You cannot get away with making 4 movies, even if part of the budget is coming out of your own pocket. In today's climate, especially, basically, you made a series of movies that could probably be 2 seasons of a television show, and you want to release it cinematically. And I admire that, but again, even from the reviews of people who did see it, and I know one person who actually did go to a theater and watched it, it was it was an okay movie, but I didn't understand what it was really about, you know. So again, that works on a television show. That doesn't necessarily work when you're trying to make 4 of these.
Yeah, I mean, you said before too, like we were having a conversation about this the other day, that apparently he's obviously put up money not just on the production but on the marketing. So really, Warner's isn't losing too much out of the deal. But still, I think even for exhibitors who run theaters, why continue to have this movie out there if nobody's going to see it? If it's not going to generate money, because they need to sell their concessions. And, you know, why even have this on screen when they could have screens saved for a Deadpool and Wolverine or some other big production that's coming out that's guaranteed to put asses in seats? Um, I'm with you with him pushing for the theatrical experience. I commend it absolutely, but yeah, you know, it's hard to do that gamble just because you think Yellowstone was a big hit for you and it brought you back. That you think that audience that was there for you for Dances with Wolves is going to return. No, most of those people have died off or they're just too old to go to movies. They don't want to bother. Um, Tried this gamble with Waterworld. We saw how that worked out. I just think this is just better as just doing it in multi-part streaming as opposed to putting these out in the theaters. That's where it would thrive versus, you know, having to sit for 3 hours of the American West and, you know, just the same boring story. But listen, if you're looking to try to boost the numbers, I don't know if he started shooting the third one yet. Maybe just put some more stars in it to attract people. Maybe throw in like an Adam Driver or Sydney Sweeney, or, you know, maybe throw some people of color in there. You know, throw in everybody to try to guarantee some money, get some relevant people. Hell, maybe throw somebody at Leo to play like the villain if you're going to try to save this thing, because I don't see any other way that this venture is going to actually be profitable for him.
I don't know. He's got to beg Bradley Cooper to be in it. I don't know. And
Yes, somebody.
or Michael Pena. I'm sure he's not doing anything. And
Yeah, but you need people that actually can guarantee drawing power. Maybe Ryan Gosling.
That's going to be a hard get. Chris Evans.
Chris Evans could help. Margot Robbie is his daughter.
I mean, try to get Chris Hemsworth since you booted him from whatever other project you have going. And
Yeah, you have
uh,
that ace up your sleeve.
exactly. Maybe since Clint's really old, bury the hatchet, have him do a cameo,
That would
or
be
let or let him do the score. Since hey, he likes to do random scores for movies. So, and next we have Jennifer Lawrence, one of my favorites, and she notably turned down the starring role in the latest Jurassic Park movie that Scarlett Johansson is taking over. And now we find out she's set to co star with Leo DiCaprio in a Frank Sinatra biofilm directed by Martin Scorsese. Now, I don't know when this film is actually ever going to happen. I know he's had this and a Dean Martin film on his slate for a very long time, but I mean, he already has his Jesus project, his documentary on Jesus, supposedly another adaptation of a historical drama from the guys who wrote The Killing of the Flower Moon about a shipwrecked ship and the survivors of that. I'm like, and he is in his mid 80s. Is this film ever really going to happen? Is my question. And
Uh, maybe it will, maybe it won't. I mean, obviously, it depends on DiCaprio getting it now before he gets too old because he's about to be 50 this year. So, you got to really make sure like he's still age appropriate to play Sinatra, whatever period you're going to focus on. And Jennifer Lawrence, I'm thinking either she's going to play Ava Gardner or she's going to play Nancy.
I think she's going to play Ava Gardner, even though Ava Gardner was Hispanic. So that's why I'm like, I don't know how we're going to handle this, but okay. I really wanted the Dean Martin biofilm more than the Frank Sinatra. Guys, say what you will. The one starring Ray Liotta was good enough for me
Yeah.
with the Rat Pack. That was a fine film. So, but we shall see. I mean, I like Jennifer Lawrence. I like the energy she brings to whatever project she's on. And obviously, she didn't have that bad of a time making that film with Leo DiCaprio about the end of the world if she's willing to work with him again. So we shall see. And that I guess that will be my new line for every at the end of each story. We shall see. And um, X-Men 97 has a new head writer. And the head writer is somebody who was writing for the show in the first season, just not as the head. And his previous Marvel experience is on the What If series, the Miss Marvel series, and Thor: Love and Thunder. He was one of the writers of that book. Already people are spelling doom for the, I guess, third season, because I think the second season was already in production when they fired Bo DeMeo. I'm trying to have hope, but as always, when it comes to Marvel, sometimes, hey, something's working. Let's beat it into the ground or get rid of the person who was giving us the goods in the first place. Because I'm like, how many times did it take Thor to get it right? And then once they finally got Thor right, they were like, you know what? Let's do another weird one. And then everybody got tired of it. So, how do you feel about this? I mean, eventually there was going to have to be a new head writer, but you just were hoping it was somebody maybe who wasn't working on the more comedic stuff of Marvel.
Right now, it doesn't bother me because Bo DeMeo, he was doing Moon Knight. He was writing Blade at one point, and I'm not part of the fact that like, oh, he's gay and he's proud, like that. That doesn't bother me. But all I wanted was just a legit continuation to the cartoon and to be taken seriously, and it was great. I mean, from beginning to end, I thought it really was the best thing that Disney Plus put out in since its inception. And so changing the showrunners, it's a little nerve wracking because you want to make sure they're not going to screw it up. But if they have the other writers involved and the other producers, I know like some of the original producers from the 90s show are still involved in a consulting capacity. So I think if they were to be around, then they could probably curb this guy from any of his worst instincts as a writer. That's really what will be key to keeping it successful.
Okay. And for our last story, this is a big one before we unfortunately have to go to our rest in pieces. The Blade reboot, which Mahershala Ali has control over director and writers, just lost out on Delroy Lindo, who dropped out of the film, and director Jan Demond dropped out. And at this point, the script has gone through 6 writers, including Bo DeMeo, Nick Pizzolatto, who did A True Detective, Michael Starbury, who wrote When They See Us, Michael Green, who wrote Blade Runner 2099 and Logan, Eric Pearson, who did Thor Ragnarok, Black Widow, and the Fantastic Four recently, and Stacey Osei Kuffour, who was a writer on Watchmen. So I applaud him that the writers here he's getting are mainly writers of a little bit more dramatic Marvel works, and also are people of color as writers. But I'm just wondering, what is it that Mahershala Ali is looking for in this reboot at this point?
There's a lot of rumors that are going around right now about what it is that he's looking for, whether it's to that he's not familiar with the comics and he wants something more like the Wesley Snipes movie. Some have said that he's looking for it to be his Black Panther, like he wants something that's epic and culturally significant. Here's what I come down to, and this is again is one of the biggest problems that Marvel is doing, and this is something that's rare. You're basically ceding control to the actor as opposed to what Kevin Feige has always done, which is this is a producer controlled franchise where the directors have to answer to the producer and the actor gets locked into a deal for however long they go, and maybe over time they might get some control over certain aspects of it, but in beginning no, they don't. The last time that happened was Edward Norton with Hulk, which was in the early days, and that was a big mess that ultimately, even after they got it done and it did only okay at the box office, they said, we're not using this guy ever again. Let's use Mark Ruffalo, who does play ball and does cooperate with the production staff. There's a lot of comparisons you could also make to say, like with The Flash and the changes in directors and writers for that before they finally got it made, despite those problems. But I keep thinking about when Sylvester Stallone was going to do Beverly Hills Cop and insisted on changing the writing and being involved in that, increasing the action and going away from what the producers wanted, which was Simpson and Bruckheimer wanted a comedy. He wanted a straight up revenge picture. And finally, they said, you know what? Yes, Sylvester Stallone's a big star. Everybody loves him, but this is not working for us. This is making our budget go too high. We have to change actors. So they were amicable about it. They said, take your ideas. You can make something else. Just don't take the plot. They bring in Eddie Murphy, and it worked out. Didn't work out for Sly as far as Cobra goes, but he still had a great career. Here, you're basically having to answer to a guy that won an Oscar, what, like 4 or 5 years ago, who has not done a whole lot to follow up on that. Yes, he had the third season of True Detective, but how many other movies has he done since? He's had a couple of the Apple shows that kind of went under the radar. He was in that Netflix movie with Ethan Hawke and Julia Roberts, and now he's doing the new Jurassic Park. But he hasn't really done much to guarantee that he is this big box office draw. I think Marvel got too caught up and just acted on impulse when they said, "Oh yeah, I want to do Blade. Okay, let's give it to you because you're an Oscar-winning actor." And now it's been how long? And no movement has been made. It has now become an embarrassment for them. And the fact that they're still like trying to get this made with him at this point, the man's he's already 50. and you got to lock him into a long-term deal. It is time to call it quits on him, get this damn movie made, and go with somebody much younger that's going to play ball for the long run. Because clearly, I mean, I got to commend the fact that he has tried to get quality people, but if they're not fitting whatever it is he's looking for, that is a sign of a very insecure artist who doesn't know what he wants. When that guy goes and says that he was constantly stressing over saying one damn line off camera at the end of Eternals, this tells you this may not be the right guy you want for this job.
Well, I'm wondering if this whole situation is why Kevin Feige is not in the press saying, but is among Marvel executives saying that they in the future are only going to hire directors they can handle. And
Well, not even directors that can handle, but directors who actually have cred, who have a seasoned background. Because as we've seen, like I hate to keep bringing up Nia DaCosta, but when you get people that don't have enough cred to handle a 200, even sometimes up to a $300 million movie, that just doesn't bode well for them. They got to stick with guys that are willing to play ball like a Sam Raimi, but they could still put their stamp on it without straying off the path.
well, I feel like Mahershala Ali is sounding more like a Kevin Costner, where it's like I'm only supposed to be an actor producer here, but I want to basically tell the director what to do. And
Did they not hear stories about Channing Tatum with Gambit, which had the same problem? Multiple directors, multiple writers with multiple different ideas of it's going to be a heist movie, then it's going to be a romantic comedy, and they could not figure it out. Then he's like, "Fuck it, I'm going to direct it myself." And then Fox was bought out, and it didn't happen. This is not far off from that situation.
I wouldn't be surprised if Mahershala Ali all of a sudden said I'll direct it, and then it's
Well, he
just
just flat
we have
out
to get.
quits. I'm still banking on the fact he's going to be out of here.
Well, we'll see. I mean, it depends on how vital it is to, I guess, Marvel's future plans. But now that they've got multiverses, it's like, okay, well, we'll just do something different, you know. And that was the last news story. But now, before we go to trailers, we must take a few moments to those who have fallen this week and unfortunately died. I mean, there's Dr. Ruth, there's Richard Simmons, but also the man we were speaking about earlier, Robert Towne, legendary screenwriter. Um, if you are into movies, how do you not know who Robert Towne is? He wrote Chinatown. He wrote its sequel, The Two Chase. Not as lauded, but Chinatown is celebrated as one of the greatest, if not the greatest, screenplay ever written. And it's considered one of the best movies ever written. But he also directed other things. He personal best with Mario Hemingway, Without Limits with Billy Crudup, and the one I know kind of got taken away from him, Graystroke, The Legend of Tarzan, a movie I remember vividly as a kid for its poster, but even I to this day have never actually seen it from beginning to end. And this is also the infamous film where they dub Andie MacDowell's dialogue with Glenn Close. Annie was her debut. So he did discover Andie MacDowell. And he took a pseudonym, A.S. Bazak, as his writing name for it. I guess he really didn't like his own writing of the screenplay, which he directed, but yet he put his name as director. Just a little strange thing. He also directed, the last movie he actually directed was Ask the Dust with Salma Hayek and Colin Farrell, which was based on a John Fonte novel. Come on, he wrote and directed Tequila Sunrise with Mel Gibson and Raul Julia. He was also pretty much Tom Cruise and Warren Beatty's go-to writer. whether it's writing original screenplays or doing uncredited work. So here's a list of the films that he wrote. The Last Detail with Jack Nicholson. Shampoo with Warren Beatty. He also wrote Mission Impossible, this movie. Mission Impossible 2, story by credit. He wrote The Yakuza with Robert Mitchum. Days of Thunder. The Firm. The remake of A Love Affair with Warren Beatty and Annette Bening. But check out all the things he was an uncredited writer on. Deal of the Century with William Friedkin. Heaven Can Wait, another Warren Beatty film. Orca, the killer whale movie. The Missouri Breaks with Marlon Brando. Frantic, a movie we keep mentioning around here. Tough Guys Don't Dance. I don't know. I think they were just drinking buddies. That's how he got involved there. I can see why he wouldn't want his name on that one. 8 Million Ways to Die, uncredited. The Parallax View. The New Centurions with Stacy Keach. Cisco Pike. McCabe and Mrs. Miller by Robert Altman. Drive, he said, Jack Nicholson's second film he directed, and then hasn't really directed anything since. And strangely enough, he was a producer on Medium. And he acted in the movie Suspect Zero with Aaron Eckhart and The Pickup Artist, James Toback, Inventive. And he was also an uncredited writer on Bonnie and Clyde. And so the man had this long, fruitful career, close friends with Jack Nicholson, Warren Beatty, and then Tom Cruise, and never seemed to insult Tom Cruise in his Scientology beliefs. And his daughter is actress Catherine Towne, who has been in quite a few films. I'm going to tell you the truth. I kind of, since he's been out of the loop in the last few years, I had thought he might have already passed away, you know, because you never heard any new interviews, never heard anybody really speak of him, unless he was just living in seclusion with like Jack Nicholson in the hills. But, you know, I'll admit, I like Chinatown. I think it's a good movie. It's not my favorite, but it is a kick-ass script with plenty of surprise that, if you don't know by now, has probably been spoiled for you. But he was the closest, like how Ernest Hemingway is revered as a writer for books. I think Robert Towne is that way for screenwriters. And so, what do you have? What are your memories of Robert Towne, or at least his writing and the films he was involved in? And
pretty much everything you said. I think the biggest memory I have is watching the Robert Evans documentary and telling the story of how he pitched Chinatown, and he said, "Oh, why is it called Chinatown? Oh, it's a state of mind." Like, I don't know what the fuck he's talking about, but Jack Nicholson, so okay, I'm ready to do it. Yeah, no, he's definitely one of the all-time great writers, and I can't say too much about his direction. I wasn't really big on Without Limits, but definitely as a writer, if you saw his name on a movie, I always felt like you were getting good quality.
I agree. Unfortunately, well, rest in peace, Robert Towne. Robert Towne, almost said Robert Townsend.
Thankfully.
Yes, he's still with us. Sorry about that. Also, another legend who passed, actor Martin Mull, whom probably most of you will remember as Colonel Mustard on Clue, and also on Roseanne as Leon, usually her manager when she was working at the department store. And for those of you who are old school 70s and 80s fans, you might remember a canceled cult television show called Fernwood Tonight with him and Fred Willard and Alan Thicke, who wrote the music for. He also had appearances in Private School with Matthew Modine and Phoebe Cates. Bad Manners. Oh, that's a future episode in and of itself. Killers with Ashton Kutcher. My Bodyguard with Adam Baldwin and Chris Makepeace and Ruth Gordon. FM, A Futile and Stupid Gesture, where he played the adult character that Will Forte plays, all about National Lampoon. Relative Strangers. Many of you might remember him in Jingle All the Way with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Mrs. Doubtfire. Ski Patrol. Hey, man's got to work. The Boss's Wife. OC and Stiggs with Robert Altman. Mr. Mom as the executive who tries to, I guess, get with Terry Garr. The Jerk 2, the TV movie. It's Take This Job and Shove It. And Mary Hartman. And he is obviously a veteran of stage and screen. One of my favorite recognizable character actors of all time. Usually in comedic roles, but yeah, that one hit hard. He is definitely going to be missed by me. Do you have any memories of Mr. Martin Mull?
Oh, plenty. But some of the ones that stand out to me with him, the voice of the cat on Sabrina Teenage Witch. I don't recall the name.
Yeah, he wasn't the cat. He was actually on it physically as a teacher.
Oh, he was. Okay, yeah. I haven't watched enough of that show to really know. But I do know he did the voice on the show Family Dog. You remember that?
Yes.
Yeah, he was one of the cast members on that. And you mentioned FM. That's actually one of my favorite performances of his, because that was the movie that kind of inspired WKRP in Cincinnati. And he was sort of he was one of the DJs, but I remember there was like this whole scene where I guess like a girlfriend or a wife had broken up with him, and he starts like doing this sad poem over the air, doesn't realize he's on the air, and then all these women start like flocking over to the station because they're like falling madly in love with him. And I thought that was freaking hilarious. So that really was like one of the standout moments that I remember in film. And he was like another Dabney Coleman to me, like just one of those like pleasant presences in a movie, mostly in comedies, but just the guy was a really great character actor, and one that I'm actually shocked is gone and certainly going to be missed.
Yes, I'm shocked he was never in a Christopher Guest movie.
Yeah, he would have fit that.
Exactly. So that's shocking. But again, rest in peace to Mr. Martin Mull. Also, we lost Bill Cobbs, who, Jesus, his career, he's been in, think of any 80s or 90s television show, he guest starred on it, and movies, but I can't read his whole career. But here, I'll try to give you some highlights that most of us will remember. People Under the Stairs, he played the grandfather. The Hudsucker Proxy, he was the timekeeper. Demolition Man, he remembered Simon Phoenix and Sylvester Stallone's character. Sad part is I can remember Wesley Snipes' character's name, but I don't remember Sylvester Stallone, and he's the hero. His name.
Oh, John Spartan.
Oh, see, that doesn't roll off the tongue like Simon Phoenix. He was in the acclaimed television show with Sam Waterston, I'll Fly Away. And he was strangely, he was even on an episode of The Sopranos. True Colors, the television series, not the John Cusack movie, that had Frankie Faison, then replaced him with Cleavon Little, and the old lady from Rhoda starred on that series. He was on your favorite, The Gregory Hines Show. He was in this, for every African American or gangster movie person, he's the one who shot Nino Brown at New Jack City. First Kid with Sinbad, and Enough with Jennifer Lopez. Actually, he was her trainer in that movie. I remember specifically wondering, "Is you sure you guys want to cast him?" And he was in a Christopher Guest movie, A Mighty Wind, among other films. Um, Look, I always remember him in everything he was in. Usually it was bit roles, but in I'll Fly Away, that was the series where I feel like he really got to stretch as an actor. And of course, The People Under the Stairs. That's like one of my favorite movies of all time. So even though he had a bit role in it, he made his presence felt, even though it did look like he was going to get killed at the door towards the end. And interestingly enough, his first film role was in Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3. And because he was also in The Color of Money, Silkwood, Trading Places, Brother from Another Planet, Grease, Lightning, Hero Ain't Nothing But a Sandwich. Like I said, I can keep going on about his credit. But Andre, what are your memories of Bill Cobbs?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned some of the big highlights of his. There's also, I think you mentioned The Bodyguard.
No, I didn't
Yeah,
actually.
so he was. I don't know if he was like one of the assistants that hires Kevin Costner when Whitney Houston gets the threatening letter, but I mean, obviously, he had a very significant role there. Um, there was also Ghost of Mississippi, where he played the brother of Medgar Evers, who's the DJ, and he has a pretty powerful scene with Alec Baldwin in there. That it's only like a brief cameo, but it has a landing impact in that film. And probably the one that always brings a smile on my face every time I see it is Del Paxton in That Thing You Do, playing the jazz musician that Tom Everett Scott looks up to. And he only has like two scenes in there, but he totally sold it as like, I almost would have thought he was a real jazz musician the way he came off. Yeah, highly underrated, highly overlooked among all the great black actors in cinema. Even rivaled Morgan Freeman and others in roles, in the last couple of years. I think he was even supposed to do a movie that Ozzie Davis was supposed to take before he had passed, but it never got produced. But yeah, he's one that I don't think he ever got enough flowers, given how much he's worked over the years. I mean, I think he rivals Samuel L. Jackson in a lot of ways. The amount of appearances he's made in film and television, and I think, I mean, it's sad he's gone, but I think that was a life well lived.
I agree. Totally agree. So rest in peace, Mr. Bill Cobbs. And also, Shelley Duvall passed away recently. Many people will always remember her from Popeye and The Shining, fairy tale theater that used to come on. I think those are more home videos, but I'm sure it was on either HBO or
Oh, on
Channel 13.
HBO.
Okay, because I remember seeing it somewhere myself as a child. I can't say I was the biggest fan of it, but I do remember it. And I remember the exquisite costumes, and she always had a different look depending on which story she was introducing. So she was more of the visual reading Rainbow, like LeVar Burton was for reading Rainbow. Um, of course, she's a Robert Altman veteran, Nashville, Three Women. She was in a Woody Allen movie, Annie Hall. Uh, More recently, she was in that Drew Barrymore, Luke Wilson romantic comedy, Home Fries, Rocket Man with Harland Williams. Had a cameo in the Underneath Steven Soderbergh film with Peter Gallagher. Portrait of a Lady with Nicole Kidman and John Malkovich. I mean, it's work. Suburban Commando with Hulk Hogan and Christopher Lloyd. Time Bandits, the movie. Buffalo Bill and the Indians, or Sitting Bull's History Lesson with Paul Newman, another Robert Altman. Thieves Like Us, Robert Altman. McCamus Miller, Robert Altman. Brewster McCloud, Robert Altman. But did you know she guest starred in an episode of The Huleys with D.L. Hewley, or Frasier, or L.A. Law, or the original Frankenweenie short film. And she played the mother, and an episode of Barrett. So she had an acclaimed career and life. She's iconic to many actors and actresses. What are your memories of Shelley Duvall?
Well, I'm ashamed to say when I was a small child, I actually thought she was related to Robert Duvall, and then it took a while before I realized, oh, they're not related just because they have the same last name. But I was definitely one of those kids that I mean, I watched Popeye as a kid. I watched Fairy Tale Theater. I didn't see The Shining until I was like maybe in my early teens, and seeing her in that different light, and obviously that would become like probably her most, unfortunately, most memorable and iconic performances. And yes, also Suburban Commando as well. You know, with more of a housewife position with Christopher Lloyd, and she works pretty well in that too. Obviously, a very troubled last several years, fighting diabetes and depression, and it's just she is now pain free, as sad as to say, but also at the same time free of the things that she had to deal with in the later part of her life. But no doubt, besides being a talented actress in all the Robert Altman movies, she was kind of like one of those people that brought a smile to children's faces all over the world with the things that she did in the 80s and the 90s. And she left a lasting impact overall.
Yeah, and of course, now we find out infamously how like abused she was on the Shining set by Stanley Kubrick and his constant takes and just alienating and verbal abuse of her. And really, the only actor he ever seemed to really be that mean to. I mean, he obviously was a very taxing director, but he seemed to take glee in torturing her for some reason. And so, definitely rest in peace, Shelley Duvall. Uh, might it be peaceful wherever you are now, and you will not be forgotten. And unfortunately, our last rest in peace just happened this morning. Shannen Doherty has passed away after a long battle with cancer. Um, most of you are going to remember of a certain age, Beverly Hills 90210, but she was also iconic in Heathers. She also was in, I don't believe I'm referencing this, Girls Just Want to Have Fun, which I remember her first from, and the Wilford Brimley show, Our House,
Yeah.
where she played the daughter on that. And of course, a lot of other people remember her from Charmed, the first go round, and were upset when she got fired from that show, just like she did 90210. And I know she did a bunch of movies with Judd Nelson, who she was dating at the time. My thing was, say what you want. I don't know anything about, oh, Mallrats.
Mallrats.
Uh, I don't know anything about her personality. I never had to work with her, but I always thought she was a good actress on screen, because I remember, she was still a teenager when she was doing Heather. So she's been a child actress. So she had been acting forever. And I was like kind of happy when she found fame on 90210. I maybe not what she did with that fame. I don't know. I don't know if it was just that she was steadfast and knew what she wanted, or maybe she was a brat. I will never know. But she was never an actress I looked down upon. Like I always looked forward to her if she was in anything or even guest starring, even when she did the new 90210. But like I said, we're all mostly going to remember her for three movies: Mallrats, Heathers, and uh, Girls Just Want to Have Fun. More of a supporting role in the other two, more of a lead role as the girlfriend in Mallrats, but she was the cool girlfriend in that movie. And of course, unfortunately, she's also known for that her eyes were a little crooked. So, she always had that kind of look that it was a kind of a interesting gaze. But she always, I don't feel like she ever went down to a low point like a Lindsay Lohan, where it's like, oh, why are you in this? So uh, she is pain free now, but I definitely respect her as an actress and her career. What are your memories of Shannen Doherty?
Well, like everybody else, 90210 was my first exposure to her, and then I saw Heather's maybe a year or two after 90210 first hit the airwaves, and that's when it was like now whenever anytime that movie played, they were obviously promoting her as much as they were promoting Winona Ryder and Christian Slater. Um, yeah, she definitely, because of her public persona, there was the sense that, oh, she was very difficult and unsufferable to deal with. But no denying her performances were always something that were memorable. And she had a personality that I think gravitated. And she was actually a really good looking woman. There were people that have obviously had crushes on her. They didn't just like flat out love to hate her like they did on 90210. And yeah, I mean, I think about even as a child actor, having worked on Our House. One of her first acting roles was in the movie Night Shift. She was the Girl Scout, and also I think I could be wrong. She might have been on like the later end of Little House on the Prairie. I know she did some stuff with Michael Landon,
Okay.
because he did mentor her, as far as I know, before his passing. But yeah, she definitely has some long lasting memorable moments in film and on television. And obviously when they did the later like the meta 90210 thing back in 2019, she obviously played up her brave fight against cancer. So she was able to kind of live long enough to, try to be more of a positive influence and a positive light in life, and to be brave about her fight. And I think that's really what it amounts to in the end, was that she fought all her way to try to stay alive as long as she did. And she's definitely going to be a missed presence in film and television.
Yes, a noted Republican too, and
Um,
and she did cameo on when they made Heather's the series that is now very hard to find due to people finding it in bad taste. But I remember in the first episode that I did see, she did cameo. So and she still has that legacy among other. And we say rest in peace to Shannen Doherty. And now we go to the trailer. So I guess we should start with the big one. Gladiator 2, the trailer, has finally been unleashed. And oh boy, did a lot of people have opinions on it. It's one for Denzel Washington not even trying to hide his New York accent as an emperor in this film, and also for the choice to have a hip hop song play in like the second half of the trailer. And no mention of Joseph Quinn's makeup as the villain, though, in the trailer. This film stars Paul Mescal. Denzel Washington is really the big name here. Connie Nielsen coming back to play the Queen.
Pedro
Joseph.
Pascal.
Who else?
Pedro Pascal.
Uh, Pedro Pascal. Not Demon Hansu does not make a return, unfortunately. Um, Look, I don't really feel like there needs to be a sequel to Gladiator. I don't love Gladiator. I think it's a good movie. Don't get me wrong. It's just not one of my favorites. And I feel like the end has a definitive ending. There doesn't need to be another one. But Hollywood and money talks. And for some odd reason, over the years, Ridley Scott has really had a hard on to make another one of these. And he finally got it. But this time he's like, aha, before you can talk, I've got Denzel with me. American gangster Denzel, which could be a good or a bad thing, depending. But look, I'm gonna be like everybody else. I'm probably gonna go see it because I have no interest in seeing Wicked, which comes out the same weekend. So my take is there's gonna be plenty of action. But Andre, I think you're probably a bigger Gladiator fan than I am. So what did you think of seeing the initial trailer? Hmm?
It looks big. It looks epic, and Denzel looking badass. But why does this have to be made? I don't see the point. And that's the biggest problem that I take away from it. Not just Denzel's presence in there or the hip hop music being thrown in. It's just Gladiator is a fine movie on its own that doesn't need sequels. So why bother with this? It seems like Ridley Scott is really just out for the money these days.
But that was going to be my next question. Do you think this is Ridley Scott's last chance at a big budget film? Mm.
No, because he's a legend. I think maybe the only reason they're doing is maybe Universal probably threatened to do a direct to video sequel of Gladiator and like, oh fuck it, I'll do it.
Okay, because I'm like, because let's not forget Napoleon bombed, House of Gucci bombed. Is like we're running out of things because he might have to go back to White Squall territory
Why
or
not
Thelma.
to Black Rain? I'd be down for that.
Well, that would be more international. I mean, but that's still considered one of his smaller projects. All the things he's doing now are like, oh no, it has to be epic or expensive. So I wouldn't mind if he takes his time, because this is the thing I find, even with the bad movies of his that he does big budget wise, they all feel rushed. That like it doesn't feel like he took any time making the film. It was like, okay, we got a schedule, we got to finish this. Even the stories feel rushed. And it's like, I understand you're an older person, but you would think you'd indulge a little more, like Michael Mann does.
Yep.
Like they each have the opposite problem. Michael Mann indulges too much, and then Ridley Scott moves too fast. So I don't know. Like, can they find a middle ground? Like maybe a Clint Eastwood, but more stylish. And okay, so that is Gladiator 2 out November 22nd, I believe. Next, we've got, as always, a teaser of a Brad Pitt movie with F1, his racing drama. It, it feels like whenever you read about Steve McQueen and his dream project, Le Mans, and then you watch Le Mans and it's like, okay. Like, it's not very exciting, the trailer. It's like, okay, there's some cool car angles, but is everybody like trying to be like, we got to be better than Days of Thunder? We got to make a race car movie again. Because remember, we had that Chris Hemsworth movie from a few years back. We had Ford versus Ferrari. We had Ferrari. We had what was the one made by the guy who made District 9? That was
Turismo.
Yeah, we had that recently. Are they all just trying to find that nut to crack when it comes to making a memorable racing movie, or is this just a personal interest of the stars?
Well, I got news for you, Jeff. This movie is produced by Jerry Bruckheimer, who also produced Days of Thunder, and it's directed by Joe Kosinski, who did Top Gun Maverick. So this is almost like, I think, Bruckheimer trying to redeem himself from Days of Thunder, and I agree with you. There's nothing impressive here. I wanted to see more of Damson Idris's role because I'm curious exactly what he's playing. If he's supposed to be Brad Pitt's racing partner or his rival, that's what I'm more interested in. But I'm looking at this and I'm like, this is no different than any other race car movie where, oh, we're gonna have the camera in the cockpit and make you feel like you're actually in the race. Um, there's a reason I think this is going theatrical and on Apple afterwards. I'm just like, this is not doing it for me.
This is Days of Thunder without the melodrama. Or Driven 2 without Sylvester Stallone. Next, we have, I guess at this point, John Cena, since he's in everything, his yearly Amazon Prime movie. But this time, he brought Aquafina with him so they could start in the buddy comedy Jackpot, which at this point is Aquafina becoming the non-action version of Jackie Chan? Is it always every time they get a Asian star like, let's do a team up movie and just keep her doing team up movies? Because that's what this feels like, where she wins the lottery, but the lottery is she has to survive a weekend without getting killed, and whoever kills her gets the money. And for some odd reason, John Cena is protecting her in his kind of action but doofus kind of role. I'll admit, only because it's going on streaming, I will watch it. Whereas if this was a theatrical movie, I would not pay to see it. What is your feeling on this movie, Jackpot?
The second I saw this trailer, I thought this was basically Quiz Lady, but with action sequences, because that's immediately what I thought of right away with Aquafina and this whole thing with the lottery. And now everybody's trying to kill her. And then you have John Cena basically doing, comedic John Cena shit as usual. But this idea, oh yeah, put him with Aquafina, it's going to be hilarious. It's going to make a lot of money. I wasn't really impressed with it. I mean, there's some funny bits in there with her, but I'm just like, I would pass up on this.
Yeah, it's something that you feel like anybody could have done this. Like you could have put two people anywhere together, and they would you'd get the same results. And after that one, we have the premiere of the Agatha All Along trailer, um, which starts off as a police procedural and then goes into, are we supposed to be rooting for this villain now? I'm confused. And also it seems like it's going away from the quirky nature in which they were marketing it in the first place with that stupid song. And now this seems like way more serious. So I'm not getting the tone exactly of this series. What are you thinking of the Agatha All Along trailer?
It's another one that doesn't do it for me. I don't see anything exciting. It just seems like we're taking another like D-list character, giving her own show because of the popularity of that song from WandaVision. And then, oh, we're gonna hint, oh, maybe Wanda could come back. Oh, if you stick to the end, you get what you want. Like, who cares? This is another thing I just with Disney and Marvel, I'm just gonna pass up on. There's nothing that's really exciting just because you got Aubrey Plaza and you got Pay Lapone all playing these unique characters. It's like I don't really care for this. This just seems like one of those things where when they were trying to ramp up production on the Disney Plus shows for Marvel, that this was one of those things that they just said, "Oh, let's just do it because we need content." It's filler. It's not going to really make any impact on the larger narrative, as far as I can tell.
Okay. Next we have My Old Ass, which goes with one of the best titles of the week, which stars Aubrey Plaza as she on a camping trip. Um, the younger version of her, she plays the older version of a character who meets themselves on a camping trip and now starts to question and wonder everything about their modern life and can still get in contact with herself through the phone. Um, this is obviously more aimed at women, like a kind of fantasy but realistic coming of age tale. And I hate to say it, I'm kind of interested in it, but I think that's more due to Aubrey Plaza's presence in the film. Like, I probably watch this even if she wasn't in it, but only again if it was a streaming movie and it came highly praised. It is the writing and directing debut of Megan Park, who was an actress who, if any of you watch The Secret Lives of the American Teenager, she was on that show. So, what did you think of the trailer for the movie My Old Ass?
So when I saw what the plot was looking like, I thought this was like a reverse version of that Bruce Willis movie, The Kid, where he's like teaming up with his younger self.
Oh yes.
Now it's this girl's beating her older self. I mean, we've seen this kind of plot before. Um, I'd check it out because I like Aubrey Plaza, but it really didn't do a whole lot for me as far as getting me excited or thinking, oh, this is hilarious. There might have been some bits that made me chuckle, but it was kind of dry for me.
Okay, and that is My Old Ass. Um, Speaking of My Old Ass, Robert Zemeckis has made another movie with Tom Hanks and Robin Wright. The whole Forrest Gump team is reuniting for Here, where the whole movie takes place in basically Tom Hanks and Robin Wright's house's living room, where the camera doesn't move and stays in one angle the whole time. So it's sort of like Robert Zemeckis getting to try his technical wizardry mixed in with a blockbuster film and cast, even though it has more of an experimental premise. Um, I'm not the biggest Robert Zemeckis fan. He's a good director, but this isn't whetting my appetite. You know, I'm like I can skip, and you're talking to somebody who still has yet to watch Castaway, so that's why I'm like, you know, your experiments don't really work with me, so I'm probably gonna skip. What are your feelings on the trailer?
Ooh, I got some shit to say about this one. He's been on a losing streak, and this is just going to add to it. The whole, I mean, it does sound like it's classic Robert Zemeckis to try to do something experimental, like he did with Castaway, what he did with Roger Rabbit. But here, the idea that it's going to be all in one angle over the course of ages, and we're going to de-age these characters. Like, people are already kind of over the de-aging shit. It didn't work for The Irishman, and asking Tom Hanks to act the way he did when he was in Booze and Buddies is not going to work here. And already, I think there's some AI stuff that's being used that I know is going to cause some controversy. So I think it's just going to fall into the same bracket with The Wall and Welcome to Marwin and The Witches, and even that Pinocchio live action movie is just Robert Zemeckis just doesn't have the magic anymore. But here's one thing that I can say on a positive note: if you love Roger Rabbit and if you love Back to the Future, Super 7 has reaction figures for both of those great films. And those could be bought now at the website. And they do have a big Comic Con booth coming up. Probably by the time this episode airs, it will already have passed. But still, they got some exclusives coming out. And you could save 7% using the promo code AJ Epics. And anything else you want to buy in the store, you can get a discount just by using that code. So go check that out now, because that's the only thing that I like to remember Robert Zemeckis for is those great movies that made me want to buy those toys, because the stuff he does now is full of shit.
Flight wasn't that bad, and
Well, that was his last good film. That was the
yeah,
last one. Was like that didn't feel like a Robert Zemeckis movie, and it was
sure.
brilliant. And then it just nosedived, no pun intended, right after that.
But speaking of Super Seven, I would totally get a Jessica Rabbit, a Roger Rabbit, and a Marty McFly. And
And they just put out an Eddie Valiant figure, which I thought was long overdue. So Bob Hoskins gets his respect.
finally, about time. Um, except for those who are still holding out for that Super Mario Brothers Bob Hoskins doll. And
Well, you could buy it on eBay. I actually have one.
oh, so see, it is out there. Uh, now show your true devotion to the man, or at least the movie. For all of you who say, "Oh, I prefer the live action," and so
If you look
we'll
hard enough,
see.
there should be a Smee from Hook figure around.
Mm-hmm. Now, if they ever do my dream, the Long Good Friday doll, you know, that's the one I want. Or even better, Mona Lisa the doll.
Oh, I would like Mona Lisa.
Exactly. You don't even really have to change the clothing. It could be an all-in-one. um, next trailer, I will introduce it. Then I will pick up the paper with all the trailers' names are written on. The one I'm just gonna tell you, I'm not gonna go see it. The Rock with Chris Evans in a Christmas movie called Red One. What is it with him? Netflix movies called Red. First of all, in the title, unless his character from the Ryan Reynolds Red movie is now working for Santa, why did it have to be called Red One? Oh, I get it. Oh, because it's Santa. He's on the Santa League. I'm like, this just reeks of a movie like that Ryan Reynolds would say no to. That's the only reason I can figure out why this film is being made. What did you think of the Red One trailer, Andre?
Oh my God, this was crap. And it's surprised that we've heard all these problems with The Rock on that set. Was he like peeing in bottles to save and conserve, and clashing
On
with
a Christmas movie?
Yeah, clash with actors, clashing with crew members. I mean, that's not Christmassy, especially from a guy that's such a big time influencer, movie star, wrestler, and so forth. And I love The Rock. Don't get me wrong. I think, he's an inspiration, but this is just another one of those like over-bloated Netflix productions with a lot of money thrown at it. Or actually, it's an Amazon production, sorry. But
It's-
this was just like nothing. This is like I don't even know if this was on that blacklist of scripts, but this is just horrible. And I don't. This is going to be like maybe worse than Candy Cane Lane.
Ooh, this
That's
this just
that's how bad I think it's going to be.
this reminds me of like what we were talking about with the Aquafina and John Cena movie. Like they turned it down and they were like, "Guess we'll have to go with The Rock and Chris Evans." And again, Chris Evans, get out of whatever streaming contracts you have. Be in a movie that makes it to a theater finally.
Fire your agent.
Definitely, because I'm like, your last few movies, you're like Robert Zemeckis over here.
Yeah,
You know,
it's going. He's going to probably be wanting that Marvel money again pretty soon.
why not? Soon, Robert Downey Jr. is going to go back to it. And next we have Bando Stone in the New World, starring Donald Glover. This is basically also kind of, I believe, tied to his last album as Childish Gambino. But basically, it's a survivor's tale. He plays a reclusive rock star who, I guess, wakes up to find out that the world has basically nearly ended. And so he's trying to survive, and he has no skills. And then he finds a single mother with a daughter who helps him survive through it all. And I guess they're going to the ends of the earth to find salvation. I like Donald Glover. I think it has more promise than maybe the trailer is letting on because his stuff tends to be subtle and subversive. I might not go see it in the theaters, but I will probably watch it when it comes to streaming. And if it's a Childish Gambino album, that album is going to be freaking kick ass. So those are the nice things I can say about the trailer. What did you think of the trailer?
I agree with you. It has a style to it that's interesting, and he's playing a very unique character in it. But the trailer, I don't think gets me really wanting to go and pay money to see it in the theater. I would see it on streaming or wait for reviews to come out.
Yes, because it's like for a film with the subject, it feels very dry, you know. So, next we've got a twofer from Marky Mark coming out. First, we have The Union, which teams him with Holly Berry, you know, as basically a romantic comedic spy story. I guess somebody was like, you know what? We need a romancing the stone, but not, but let's have them both be able to kick ass. And after watching this trailer, I still stand by what I've been telling Holly Berry all these years. Fire your agent. Please find a new one, please. Because the movies you do appear in, I mean, you get lucky sometimes with a John Wick, sequel, but then they didn't call you back in, and then it's like you got to make this, you know. And this is like a typical Marky Mark performance, you know, where it's like, okay, I'll go kick some ass and I get to say some wisecracks, but I don't really need to put in any effort. And what did you feel about the trailer? Mm-hmm.
It's just another bloated Netflix action picture with no substance, nothing to say, and the two leads don't look like they have much chemistry. This is a pass.
Okay, and next, the part two of it, we have Flight Risk, directed by Mel Gibson. And here's the twist: Marky Mark is the villain in this, with Michelle Dockery and Topher Grace as really the heroes, as he plays an assassin out to kill Topher Grace, who I guess is probably a government witness. And Michelle Dockery is the FBI agent assigned to protect him. And now they have to survive with the plane going down. But most notably, this is a movie where Marky Mark is bald. They shaved the middle of his head, so it's only on the sides. And I feel like that and the villain turn are the things they're using to really market the movie as even like sort of like twisters, like even it's generic and bad, but have fun watching Marky Mark hamming it up. And with his good old Christian buddy, Mel Gibson. Yeah, tell me what you think of this.
Um, it wasn't a particularly exciting trailer. It was laughable to see him with the bald spot. And obviously, we have our mixed feelings about Mel these days. I think the only thing that really interested me was the fact that Michelle Dockery is going to be the hero of this, because she is another one that doesn't get her flowers. She's incredibly gorgeous, incredibly talented, and it's good to see her get like a front and center lead where I guess she's going to be, the central hero of it. But again, I would probably wait for it on streaming. I'm not going to pay to see this.
I think it would be interesting, as I was hoping, that Topher Grace's character was going to be like his character in Predators in this. So it'd be like, I'm protecting this serial killer from this assassin, and I'm trying to pilot a plane. Now there's your movie. And even though you're more of a Michelle Dockery fan than I am, this is where Holly Berry should have been, in this movie. Then I'd be a little more excited. So that is Flight Risk. Next, we have Nosferatu, the remake, written and directed by Robert Eggers, with Willem Dafoe on his 75th job this year. Johnny Depp's daughter, Lily Rose Depp. We still don't see Bill Skarsgård in full Nosferatu makeup, but I'm going to say, just from the production design and the filming, this looks like this is going to be tight. So I think I'm probably going to see this in theaters. And as long as it's better than his Viking movie that he made with Alexander Skarsgård, and I will be there. Because that so far has been his only misstep in his whole career. Even though that film does have its strengths, I can't say ultimately, beginning to end, it was a great film. And
yeah, I'm with you with that. It looks really good. I probably would check that out.
And that is Nosferatu. Next, I hate to say, this already seems like a guilty pleasure movie. The Heretic, with Hugh Grant and Sophie Thatcher. Some of you might know who Sophie Thatcher is if you watch Yellow Jackets. She plays the younger version of Juliette Lewis, and notable, great actress on that show. And Hugh Grant in the trailer, they seem to play missionaries or Jehovah's Witnesses, going door to door, trying to convince people to love Jesus. And Hugh Grant acts like he's so interested, but then after he traps them in the house, seems like he's an intellectual willing to test their faith and their belief. And I'm like, you got me. And I'm like, Hugh Grant, you're finally being used correctly. You're getting away from these romantic comedies and playing villains, and now maybe your first out and out horror film, and a reason for you to be in a horror film. So I'm gonna be there in the theaters watching this one. How did you feel about the Heretic trailer?
Refreshing to see Hugh Grant play a deranged bad guy with a lot of wit and I guess like a gamesman type. I think that will make it kind of interesting to see. And I'm sure it's not going to please a mutual person we know who happens to be a Jehovah's Witness.
I will agree. But what I find interesting about this, it feels like a movie M. Night Shyamalan would make, though, interestingly enough. And it might be going up against his film Trap with Josh Hartnett. So that will be an interesting case-by-case study. But are you willing to see it in theater?
Oh, wait for it streaming.
Okay. Oh, this one, I have to ask why, oh why. We're going to talk about The Front Room with starring Brandy as a young woman who finds herself pregnant and having a baby, and her husband need a place to stay. and his grandmother offers them a house, but then the grandmother seems to, I don't know, try to take over parenting the baby, and this old, wily old woman is quite crazy, and it's a power struggle between her and Brandy and some kind of weird cult that this woman seems, old person cult from Rosemary's Baby, this woman seems to run. This feels like equal parts a little bit of Ma, a little bit of Rosemary's Baby, a little bit of that Jamie Lee Curtis movie Mother's Boy, a little bit of, what was the name of that other, Hush with Jessica Lange and Gwyneth Paltrow. But yet, let's try to make it urban, even though Brandy's the only black person in this movie. I will say one positive thing. The old lady looks like a hoot, like Megan. So that's the only thing this trailer has for. But I think it would have been stronger if they could have gotten a big star to play that role, like a Meryl Streep. And
Susan Sarandon.
yeah, she'll do almost anything. So, what did you think of the trailer for The Front Room?
It was all those comparisons you made. I would also throw in Get Out, and I would throw in that terrible Karen movie with Taryn Manning. That's what I was thinking of when I saw this. But more importantly, I don't know who the director is, but it looks like a movie where somebody saw I Still Know What You Did Last Summer and said, Brandy hasn't done a horror movie for a while. Let's try to give her another shot and put her in a front and center lead long after her popularity dropped off in the 90s. Why? Why, of all people? Fuck it, throw Usher into this movie as the husband or as a brother, just to make it even more to be in the 90s. Because I don't know why this was made the way it was. It is so weird to me.
Maybe Zendaya turned it down.
Yeah, maybe.
So I don't know what to make of it. I can tell you I'm not seeing it in theaters though, and it's already when this film's talked about, it's just known as the Brandy horror film. Like no other elements are talked about.
I want to know, is she doing the soundtrack?
Maybe that's yet to be discovered. Maybe she didn't cut that deal yet. She's probably begging like, I got this hit single, and then let my brother Ray J do the score. And this goes fire. Hey, he's got to work too. Those Scooty bikes and Raycons don't pay for themselves,
Wait, so he's not monetizing the Kim K sex tape?
I think he took a lump sum. So
run out fast.
Well, if you live Ray J's lifestyle, yes, But even if she doesn't do the soundtrack, can this be the return of those like R&B, like rap soundtracks from the 90s? And because that might be the way we get over with this film. Like, oh, the movie, yeah, it ain't that great, but the soundtrack though.
Lil Nas X.
Drake trying to make a comeback. That's the only reason Usher couldn't play the husband. Then why does he have a white grandmother?
Yeah.
So I'm like, somewhere Melissa McCarthy's like, oh, my phone doesn't work. So next we have We Live in Time, the big Andrew Garfield comeback movie with Florence Pugh. Look, I got a weird crush on Florence Pugh, so I'm a kind of weak. But if this is on Apple Plus, I'd probably rather watch that than in a theater. But it looks like a film that's just basically about a married couple and their relationship over the years. I'll admit, the beginning is kind of original with the meet cute of her hitting him with a car and then them falling in love. But, it's not a film you haven't seen before, but I'm willing to give it a chance on stream. And
just another sappy romantic tale. That's it.
Well, I will admit I'm more willing to see it for her than him. So, and next we have Elliot Page, big screen movie, Close to You, this film seems, obviously very similar to what they went through in their life. Making a homecoming and the family first seeing them as more male than growing up as the daughter. I think it has potential, and it does look like an interesting film. I think it probably would have helped if this came out more like right after Elliot Page's transformation. Then I think people would have been more interested. But after being on the Umbrella Academy, so enough people have seen them act as a male character, and also the autobiography that recently came out. So it's like, is there still a market for this? I believe this story should be told, but is there a market for it now?
I think there is, in fact, a market depending on how much it gets promoted, along with Elliot Page's book that came out, I think, a year or two ago, getting into all like the controversies and stories that happen on sets. Yeah, and go on the press tour to talk about it. There's probably Oscar potential here.
Well, I mean, there was also the film Monica from 2 years ago that tackled similar ground, but of course, obviously didn't have the star power in it as much as this one. It'll be interesting. I would like to see the public's reaction to it because, like I said, it looks well made and it looks like something that will grab you, but we'll have to see the earning potential. Next, we're almost through, folks, with the trailers. Next, we have The Watchmen, Chapter 1, the animated series, which seems to me to be basically, we're just doing, I guess, just like how Warner Brothers animation in their adaptations of comic books, it's always better than anything live action they do. It seems like the same thing with this Watchmen. I don't know how many parts or if this is part of those Watchmen comic books that focus on each character from a few years ago. But again, this seems like this is going to go the better route than the live action film does, even though it does show a bunch of scenes from the movie that are familiar. But I think this one will go a little bit more in depth and follow faithfully the comic book a little bit more. What did you think of the trailer?
Looks great. I think it's going to be another hit for DC's animated division.
We shall see. Next, we have The Supremes at Earl's All You Can Eat. That movie stars Anjanou Ellis and Sanaya Lathan making a big screen return. And it's about an Uzo Aduba, about three childhood friends who grow up and have a reunion to see how much their lives have changed and how much maybe their lives are unfortunately still the same. It's, a feel good African American film set in the 60s. And, it looks promising. I will probably see it, but again, probably on streaming. Nothing that's making me want to run out to the theater to see it.
Yeah, I was disappointed that this had nothing to do with the actual Supremes, to be honest. But other than that, it looks like, safe, middle of the road kind of, movie for the women, um, relationships and friendships over the course of years. Looks like a nice, pleasant movie. Something you go see with your mother.
Yeah. And finally, for our last trailer, we have Coralie Farragut, the French director behind one of my favorites of a few years ago. She has finally made another film called The Substance with Demi Moore, Margaret Qualley, and I totally forgot he was in this movie, Dennis Quaid. And it's a kind of sci-fi body horror film where it seems like Demi Moore is like kind of a beauty, I guess, brand instructor. And she takes an experimental drug that makes her transform into Margaret Qualley. That's all the trailer seems to be giving away. And that Dennis Quaid is somehow like her manager or trying to rip off Stanley Tucci from those Hunger Games movies. That's how he's dressed in his presentation. So I'm looking forward to it because I love Titane, and I loved that movie. So I'm willing to go wherever that director is taking me. So I will be there. What did you think of the trailer?
Yeah, this looked really wild. I thought it was kind of shot like Everything Everywhere All at Once, very chaotic, very much like all over the place stylistically. But the talents involved definitely have my interest peaked, especially Demi Moore and Dennis Quaalude looking all Jack Nicholson esque, probably as the villain from the way that it came off. Uh, don't know too much, but this looks very much like something like if the reviews are solid, that I'll pay to see that Alamo.
Okay, because I'm like, this might be a comeback for both Dennis Quaid and Demi Moore. Demi Moore, she deserves one, other than that Charlie's Angel sequel. So that is the trailers.
If you like this review, please be sure to like and hit subscribe to be alerted to new episodes in the future.